Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, March 8th of 2026. Now, I had a wonderful week of journaling and so much to think about because at the beginning of the week, I came across this brilliant quote that is so simple, but it sums up so many things. And the quote is what I wrote down at the very beginning of my journaling. It says, "What we don't change, we choose." And if you really think about the profoundness of this statement, it's amazing. So I'm just going to jump right into what I journaled on this. So this seems so simple, but in reality, it's extremely profound and so true. It means that I must take responsibility. It means awareness. It means taking the hard road sometimes. Um, I think a lot of times, and that's why a lot of people don't change because they might not realize they have a choice, or the choice is too hard. Okay, so to change something or anything is not neutral. Okay, it's a freaking decision. I've realized that even when I stay quiet in silence, that's a choice. So even when I don't say anything, when I should say something, and I'm not saying in anger or whatever the situation may be, if I choose to stay silent, I'm making a choice. Okay? Even doing nothing determines my future. We know how true that is. And even the future of not just myself, but my family, and ultimately, if you think about it, humanity. Okay, and I'm going to expand on that piece because that might sound like, well, the choices I make can't affect humanity. But yes, indeed, they can, more powerfully than you know. So here's what I've realized. Everyone lives inside of systems, habits, beliefs, and patterns. We all live inside of these things, these systems, right? Some are empowering and some are limiting, right? When I realize or recognize that something is off or misaligned in any of these things, okay, with my beliefs, what I know at the core of who I am to be true, like a bad habit, a bad relationship, a toxic environment, or an outdated belief, okay? So when I realize or recognize that something is off in all of those things, and I choose not to challenge it or transform it, okay, this is the crux of it. I am agreeing to continue it, okay, either consciously or unconsciously. You might just be unconscious in it, okay? So here's an example. If we see injustice and we just stay silent, if we tolerate unhealthy patterns, I'm choosing them. If I tolerate them, I'm just choosing them, okay? If I ignore my growth, inner mainly for me, I'm choosing to be stagnant. So if I ignore doing the hard stuff or growing or like, look at all of the personal development, look at all of the information that's out there. And if we choose to ignore that, then we're basically choosing to stay stagnant. Okay? This life does not run on autopilot. That's what I've realized. Okay? Most people don't understand that we are constantly voting, right? With our attention, our energy, and our actions every single day in every single moment. And that might seem overwhelming to put that into your awareness, that every moment we're choosing, okay, we're choosing with our attention, our energy, and our actions. That's so massive in this day of distraction and getting caught in those algorithms of doom scrolling and watching the news and lamenting at everything that's going on rather than doing the work and changing ourselves. Okay, I think humanity sits at a very strange crossroads. Okay, all over the world I see it. I think it's definitely a crossroads, but it feels so strange to me. Okay, so here's how I expanded on that. First of all, because we have huge and fast technology transformation. Technology is not plugging along slowly anymore. It is rapid and it's fast and it's huge. Okay, this is one of the things that seem why this is a strange crossroads for me. AI is reshaping everything, okay, about our lives, work, personal, and even our creativity. Okay, everything about that is changing for us, and it's not slow. That's the thing, right? We're becoming more and more aware of consciousness, which this piece I love. And I love that we're becoming aware that we have choice over the ascension of our consciousness, and it's individual. We don't have to worry about anyone else's consciousness or lack thereof. This is the beautiful, empowering part of all of this, okay? And not just that consciousness, but I wrote here our mental health, because if you look at the state of humanity, this is why it seems so strange to me, is because our mental health has never seemed more fragile as a collective. But I also see a rise of empowering consciousness. Like there's a massive rise, and I know you guys feel that too. And I think there's a growing questioning of all the old systems over systems of power, economy, and yes, even our identity. You know, there's a growing question of our identity. Like, not just who am I, what is my purpose, why am I here, but a remembering of who we are at the very core of what makes us a divine spark of pure consciousness. Because this is just a human avatar, and we wear it around. We need our ego, we need our identity to get us through life and pay our bills and be responsible with all of the matrixy things. But if we remember who we really are, it changes the entire game. And the cool thing is, again, this is why this crossroads for humanity feels so strange, is because this has never been more prevalent. And we have to use discernment when we're allowing this into our own reality, when we make our own choices, okay? So I've been saying it for years, along with so many people. This strange moment in and for humanity is an awakening. Okay, it's not just mystical, but collectively we're realizing that all these old ways are simply not sustainable. I mean, this is something I think dropped in pretty hardcore. Maybe at the beginning of COVID, a lot of people had this massive awakening, and it was jarring. And now it's been 6 years, and literally from when I'm recording this, 6 years and a week, less like a week from now. That's how humanity does not move fast, but in the scheme of infinity and us as an eternal being, it's a blip. It's a blip, right? So this strange moment in and for humanity is an awakening, not just mystical, but collectively we're realizing that all these old ways are simply not sustainable. And then I wrote this: for most of my life, literally at this point, decades, there was an assumption, always an assumption. And I had this for quite a bit of my life, that the systems would fix themselves or that someone else would do it. Now, who still believes that to some extent? Maybe you haven't fully released that. Someone else will fix it. Someone else will change it. Whatever. So then I wrote this, but now I see it quite clearly. The systems change only when people change. So only when we change, only when individually we change as a person, that's when the systems change. That's the only time. That's the only way. This feels like the true power behind that quote, okay? The quote of, if I don't change, I choose. If I don't change it, I choose it. That's so wildly beautiful to me. If enough of us choose awareness, the entire landscape shifts. And it's not just the landscape shifting. I believe it's the literal trajectory of humanity. If enough of us choose awareness, okay? And we always know it doesn't take every single last person, okay? Maybe this should be called the awakening of responsibility. One of my favorite words is responsibility. We get to take personal ownership of our individual role in literally shaping reality. We get to be personally responsible. We get to take ownership, okay? So you need to ask yourself this important question: am I living by default or by conscious choice? Are you just in a groove and you're just in an unconscious loop? You're just living by default. And a lot of people don't realize that that's how they're living. Maybe they haven't dropped into the awareness, the awakening, whatever, okay? And there's no judgment, because it's not about them, and not about you changing them, okay? You know, and let me continue here, because I've realized this: everything I tolerate like corruption, misinformation, even division between people. Okay, whatever I tolerate, I am quietly choosing that world. Whatever we tolerate, we choose. Okay, if we challenge these patterns, even in small ways, we're being we're we are we are being asked to build something different. If we challenge these patterns, even in small ways, uh, we're beginning to build something different. Sometimes I have a hard time reading what I was thinking. So then I wrote the cool thing. The cool thing is this. Sometimes my pen flies and I can't keep up with what my brain's trying to bring out. So the cool thing is this: change starts internally. Okay, it doesn't start with, for some people, if you think about it, a change will happen if someone gets like a scary diagnosis of something, then massive change will happen, because it's almost like, well, here I get choice to either change some things because I want to live, or just think I'm a victim and just accept what I think is my fate. Okay, so change starts internally. This feels like the biggest misconception or misunderstanding. That's what I think people don't realize, is you think the external has to change before things change, but it actually is an inside job all the way, okay? People think change must begin with our government or a massive movement, okay? That's not it, but wow, here's how I see it. Collective change is an accumulation of personal and individual awakenings. It's an accumulation, one person at a time. And I'm telling you, when you go through the layers of change, awakening, taking personal responsibility, using your discernment, changing the habits you know that are going to help with your ascension, it's an individual thing. And each person that does that changes the collective. It's not your job to change someone else. It's your job to set an example and to worry about yourself. And I'm not saying you can't help someone along or inspire them or give them something to look at or read, or, it doesn't mean not doing those things when appropriate, because most people don't want to be told what to do, or they don't want to be told, that they should change or they should awaken. Like, nobody wants to hear that. It's individual, okay? And when you realize that and it drops into you at your deepest core, it just is an ease, right? So let's see. So then I wrote down 4 things. So for this, collective change is an accumulation of personal and individual awakenings. Okay, so the first one is this, and these are actually questions. What beliefs am I carrying that no longer serve the truth? What are some of the beliefs that you have in all of these things? There's so many things. What belief do you have about a relationship that you might be in, or the work you do for a living, or maybe the religion that you grew up with, or what beliefs am I carrying that no longer serve the truth? Because I think what happens is we might be carrying a belief system that no longer feels like the truth to us, but we don't know how to opt out of it, because change is rough. Because we don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. We don't want to disappoint our parents. We don't want to disappoint our religious leaders. We don't want to disappoint our teachers, our kids, our friends, So what beliefs am I carrying that no longer serve the truth? That is actually a super big question. And then this: what fears are keeping me passive? Remember, fear is the greatest lie. So what fear, or multiple fears in these different things, what is keeping you passive? Passive is not a fantastic way to walk through this brilliant life, okay? And then the third one: what habits reinforce the world I claim to oppose? What habits are you doing in your individual day-to-day life that reinforce the world you claim to oppose? That's also a very powerful question that only you can answer. Only you get to individually answer that question, okay? And then, what small action can I take today to align with a better future? It's not that big baby, the big steps, the baby step. The baby steps are really where it's at. From my perspective, that's where the power is. Every person who does this internal shift, it ripples out. Okay, every single person. I talk a lot about quantum entanglement. Everything you say, everything you every action you take, every change you make, it ripples out. It ripples out more than you can even imagine. Okay. So then this change requires, demands even courage. Okay. Change requires courage. And it's a muscle that once you start using it, the easier and easier and easier it gets, because you start to realize that whole thing about fear being an illusion. And when you make a massive change, something that you know you need to change in your life because it's completely incongruent with maybe who you've now become. Because when you do start doing the internal work and you do it consistently over time, weeks, months, years, there might be certain situations or relationships you find yourself in that literally requires courage, demands it. It demands it of you. Okay. Courage, because the things that are familiar, no matter how unhealthy, they feel safe. Okay. The things that might feel familiar, even though they might be super unhealthy, the food you eat, the lack of exercise, the relationships, the works, whatever it is, okay, you might know it's unhealthy, but it feels safe to you. Okay, this is where the courage comes in. Okay, comfort is still a choice. Silence is still a choice, and inaction is still a choice. All of these things are a choice. Okay, if you can truly grasp this, you can stop being a spectator of what's happening. Literally history. That's what I wrote. You can stop being a spectator of history, okay, and start becoming a participant. You know how wonderful that feels to be a participant in history? That's why you see all these things that human beings have been courageous enough to do, is taking brave action and doing things that are uncomfortable, okay? In this time of rapid transformation, this mindset, it feels very essential to me, okay? So this is what we need to remember. We need to remember that we are not separate. We are interconnected. We're connected with each other. And what happens anywhere eventually affects everywhere. Okay? Eventually, all of this stuff that's happening, this is what you need to realize in this moment right now, in this freaking strange crossroads we're in. What is happening now is a trajectory of where we're going, and it's beautiful if you see it. If there is a small pocket of change and transformation and creativity and awareness and ascension of consciousness happening in all these pockets all over the world, there's millions of them. If you would just take a minute to realize that what happens anywhere will eventually happen everywhere. Like, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, I don't know what would. Okay. Awareness precedes change. Okay. You cannot transform what you cannot see. So you must nurture and grow your awareness. You must be open-minded. In fact, one of my favorite things that I love to really remind myself is that the truest form of intelligence is when you find new information and you're willing to change your mind. And you're willing to be like, maybe I was wrong there. Maybe I need to look at this situation differently. I need to look at this from a different perspective. This to me is the highest form of intelligence, and it's so beautiful. So awareness precedes change. You cannot transform what you cannot see. All right. And then responsibility is actually empowering. It's not a burden. You know, I've looked at my life over all these decades, and I look at the things that I've done, the responsibilities I've carried, and I realize being responsible is actually the most empowering thing I've ever experienced in my life, is to experience responsibility. It's not a burden. Now, would I like some shared responsibility in certain situations and relationships? 100%. But I would rather be empowered with responsibility and not never looked at responsibility as a burden. And, you know, I say that with no ego. I say that with just, that has been my life. Growing up the second oldest of 14 kids, where I got to be responsible for a lot of my siblings, and I was responsible for different chores around the house, massive things that, you know, most kids don't get to experience. I got to learn this with most of my siblings just because I grew up in this massive family. It's such a gift, okay? When you regain your agency, no, you regain your agency when you accept your role in shaping the world. Every one of us has a role. Every one of us. Every one of us has our own unique role. And you regain your free agency when you accept your role in shaping the world. Like, who wouldn't want to step into that? Like, what's your role? Your role might be to be retired and create a beautiful space for your family and friends to gather, or to do that and go on walks and meditate, and to love on the trees in your yard. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, so small choices compound into massive outcomes for everyone. And when I wrote that, I was thinking of that beautiful book by Darren Hardy called The Compound Effect. If you haven't read it, it's still massively relevant. It came out a long time ago. It's a beautiful, beautiful personal development book that you really realize that these small things, they compound into massive effects for everyone. You're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting everyone, okay? What you don't change, you choose. So I wrote that again. Ultimately, it means this: I'm not just living in the world, I am participating in the creation of it. So question every thought. So don't just question everything, every physical thing. Question everything you think. Every thought you have is just a thought until you give it meaning. And I am so guilty still of overthinking. And I literally will catch myself in moments of just overthink of certain situations or different things that are happening at any particular moment in my life. And then because I'm aware that it's just a thought and I'm overthinking it to death, then I can change it. And I'm able to now at this point change it pretty quickly. But I still do that, okay? So question every thought. Refine every habit. Take your habits and just start to refine them. It's not about perfection. Just refine your habits, okay? Speak your truth and act with courage, okay? Humanity waking up is not a collective or sudden event. That's something we really need to remember that. Humanity waking up is not a sudden event, and it's not collective. And I wrote this: it won't be a solar flare or a second coming. Okay, I grew up in a very religious Christian household, and even back as a teenager and even younger than that, I remember being told that the second coming was near. It was going to happen any day, any month, and I believed that with every fiber of my being. And I don't judge if people believe that, but my own personal belief is that it's not going to be a sudden event. It's not going to be a solar flare or a second coming. This is what I believe it is going to be. It is when millions of us slowly realize this: the future is not something that happens to us. And we've heard this 100 times. If you've done any type of personal development, it's not happening to us, it's happening for us. And we've heard that. It is something we either consciously build or we unconsciously allow, okay? So when we don't change, we choose. And I think that is an absolute perfect place to end it, because I don't know, as we move into this third month of 2026, every single week is going to bring massive changes. And every person that's on this planet is going to have their own individual experience. And some will awaken, and it's not right or wrong thing. It's not like we're awakening and we're peeling back layers and we're doing the work. We're better. It has nothing to do with that. And it's about the internal work and realizing that when we stay quiet, when we stay silent, even though we know something is off and something we should be breaking out of our comfort zone, and we stay in the easy stuff because we think it's easier, it's really the harder path. So what we don't change, we choose it. So I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I hope you have a brilliant second week in March, and we will see you next time.